My wife told me to give her access to my inheritance or she'd leave. I said, then leave, and she laughed, until I moved every cent into a spouse-excluded irrevocable trust. Her lawyer's face when he read it was absolute gold. I'll never forget the way Elena said it. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just stared at me across our kitchen island in Madison, Wisconsin, her hands flat on the counter like she was bracing herself for an earthquake she planned to start. I need full access to your inheritance, Daniel, she said, or I'm leaving. Just like that. No tremble in her voice. No hesitation. No hint that she was asking for nearly $1 million that belonged to my father before cancer took him. Just a demand like she was asking me to pass the salt. I remember blinking at her, thinking she can't possibly mean that. But she did. She absolutely did. The kitchen smelled like the garlic bread I had pulled out of the oven 10 minutes earlier. But the second she said those words, everything tasted like metal. I felt the air leave the room. I felt something inside me hollow out so fast it made me dizzy. Elena, I said slowly, that's not your money. She didn't flinch. That's our money. We're married. Your dad would want us to use it to build a life, not hoard it in an account I don't have access to. Her tone was clinical, rehearsed, like she'd practiced this in the mirror. I leaned back in my chair. You're giving me an ultimatum. I'm telling you what I need, she snapped. To feel like an equal partner. It hit me then. She wasn't emotional. She was angry, almost entitled, like she'd been waiting for the moment she could cash in on the 6 years she'd invested. The worst part? I knew this wasn't out of nowhere. It had started weeks earlier, little comments that didn't feel like comments. More like probes. We should redo the kitchen. Use some of the inheritance. I'm thinking of quitting my job and going back to school. The inheritance could support us. We could travel for a few months. We deserve it. We should buy rental properties while the market's good. Down payments aren't that much. Every conversation boomeranged back to that money. But this ultimatum was new. This was a line being drawn. A line she expected I'd crawl across. When I didn't answer fast enough, she pushed harder. You know what? She said. I'm not playing games, Daniel. Add me to that account or I walk out that door tonight. And for a split second, something in me broke. Not from her threat, but from realizing she thought it would work. She thought I needed her so badly that I'd hand her my father's entire legacy just to keep her in the house. Elena, I said quietly, then leave. The words sounded weird coming out of my mouth. Calm. Steady. Final. Her face crumpled. Not in sadness but in shock. Like she genuinely couldn't fathom a world where I didn't fold instantly. You don't mean that, she whispered. I do. She stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time, and not liking what she saw. Then she grabbed her purse and keys, walked out without packing a single bag, and slammed the door so hard a picture frame fell off the hallway wall. I sat alone for hours, staring at the empty chair she'd left behind. By midnight, I still hadn't moved. And by morning, I already knew the truth. She hadn't given me an ultimatum. She'd shown me exactly who she was. What I didn't know yet was that her walking out wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Because before the week was over, I'd discover something she never intended me to find. Something that proved her ultimatum wasn't spontaneous. It was a plan. A plan she hadn't made alone. When Elena walked out that night, the house went so quiet I swear I could hear the baseboards creak. The weirdest part was how unsurprised I felt. Hurt, yeah. Shocked, definitely. But surprised? Not really. Because when I really rewound everything, it was like the red flags had been waving in slow motion for months. I just didn't want to look at them. I grew up in Racine, Wisconsin. My dad, Martin, was the kind of man people described with words like steady, reliable, salt of the earth. He built an aerospace parts company from nothing. Sold it after he got sick. He'd always planned ahead. Always double-checked everything. Always looked 10 steps down the road. Plan for the bad days, he used to say. Anyone can survive the good ones. When he passed, I inherited $811,000 after taxes and legal fees. My sister got the same. That money wasn't just numbers. It was my dad's entire life condensed into a final gift. I told Elena everything the day the funds cleared. We were sitting on the couch, her feet in my lap. Netflix paused in the background. She hugged me, told me she was proud of me for handling the estate on my own. Told me Dad would be happy we'd keep his legacy safe. Safe. Funny word, in hindsight. We'd been married 6 years. Not perfect, not terrible. One of those marriages where you think you know the other person because you've memorized their habits. How she always left her shoes by the door, how she hated using the dishwasher, how she liked control over every small detail. I used to think that was endearing. I thought she was organized, not controlling. Caring, not calculating. Her job was part-time bookkeeping at a dental office, $30,000 a year, give or take. I never cared. Money was never the issue. We split bills fairly, kept separate accounts, had one joint checking for the mortgage and utilities. It worked. But after the inheritance hit, something in her changed. Not overnight. More like a slow leak. At first it was harmless stuff. You know, we could finally replace that ugly tile in the kitchen. We should start traveling more. We're still young. I'm thinking about getting my master's. The inheritance could float us. Every time she said we, I tried to pretend it didn't bother me, but I could feel this weird pressure building behind every suggestion, like she wasn't brainstorming. She was probing the perimeter, looking for weak points. When I didn't budge, the comments got sharper. You're acting like it's your money, not ours. Do you not trust me? Why are you hiding it in a separate bank? You don't value me. If you did, you wouldn't keep me locked out. Locked out, like it was a house she deserved keys to. After a while, I caught her snooping through a drawer where I kept paperwork for the investment account. She played it off. I was looking for the spare checkbook. Sure. Then came the fight 3 days before she walked out. She said something I didn't understand at the time. I'm done waiting, Daniel. I've been patient long enough. I remember asking, waiting for what? She didn't answer. Just stormed off and slept in the guest room. I thought it was stress, grief, money, anxiety. I didn't know she'd been talking to someone about all of this. Someone who had a lot to say about my inheritance. Someone who thought they, not Elena, should have been the one to handle family finances. I wouldn't learn that part until later, but by then the damage was already done. And the ultimatum? That was just the first crack. The real shatter came next. The morning after Elena walked out, I sat in my car in the parking lot outside my office in Middleton, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me upright. The sun was barely up. Frost was still clinging to the edges of the windshield, but my head felt like it was full of static. Buzzing, chaotic, impossible to quiet. Everybody talks about betrayal like it hits you all at once, but that's not how it felt. It was more like something slowly unspooling inside me, thread by thread, revealing things I hadn't let myself see. I kept replaying the last month in my head. Every comment, every argument, every weird moment where she'd gotten more frustrated that she couldn't get her hands on that money. But the escalation had actually started sooner than I realized. It was February when I first noticed it. She'd come home from her mom's house after one of their marathon girls' nights. They did twice a month in Madison's East Side. She was always a little tense afterward. But this time she was wired, pacing the kitchen, talking fast, almost jittery. You know, she said, it's irresponsible to keep that inheritance separate. My mom says, that's when she stopped. My mom says, she never finished that sentence. Instead she said, never mind, and stormed off. And I was too tired to push. That was my mistake. Because after that night, the comments got sharper, and they always followed the same pattern. She'd visit her mom. She'd come home worked up. She'd bring up the inheritance within an hour. She'd frame it as us, our future, our marriage. I didn't realize it then, but someone was coaching her. Someone feeding the entitlement, stoking it, building it. The week before the ultimatum, things hit a higher gear. She started showing me listings. Houses in neighborhoods way outside our budget. Cars we didn't need. Vacations that made no sense. We can afford this now, she kept saying. Then came the argument that didn't feel like a normal argument. Felt like a script. She'd cornered me by the fridge and said, "You're playing small. My mom says men who get inheritances always end up sharing it with their wives. That's what real partners do." There it was again. "My mom says." I finally snapped. "Is this about you or your mother?" Her eyes flashed. Anger, guilt, something else. "It's about us. But if you won't step up, then—" She cut herself off again. "Then what?" I pressed her. But she just shook her head and said, "Forget it." 3 days later, the ultimatum hit. After she left that night, I called my sister. Told her everything. She didn't sound surprised. "Daniel, I never wanted to say this while you were married, but Elena and her mom, they're a team. Always have been. And her mom, she's the kind of person who thinks marriage is a financial arrangement first, relationship second." I didn't want to hear it. The next escalation came from a direction I didn't expect. 2 days after Elena left, I got a text from an unknown number. "Your MIL says you're hiding the inheritance from Elena. That's not right. Call me. We need to talk." It was her mother's boyfriend. A guy named Barry. A guy I barely knew. A guy who never should have had my number. That's when the pit in my stomach turned into something solid. Something wrong. Because if Barry had my number, what else did they have? What else had Elena shared? And more importantly, why were they so obsessed with money that wasn't theirs? I didn't know yet, but I was about to find out. And when I did, everything I thought I knew about my marriage cracked open. Barry texting me should have been weird enough on its own. But the tone of the message made it worse. He wasn't asking. He was summoning me, like I owed him something. I didn't reply. I didn't even open the thread again. But 20 minutes later, he called. I declined. He called again. And again. By the 5th missed call, I shoved my phone in my pocket and tried to ignore the buzzing. That worked for about an hour. At lunch, my sister sent me a screenshot. It was from Facebook Messenger. A message from Barry to her. "Your brother needs to stop playing games. If he won't talk to Elena, he can talk to me. This isn't fair to her." I stared at the screen so long my food went cold. Why the hell was a man I barely knew messaging my sister? Why was he involved at all? I called my sister. She picked up on the first ring. "Daniel, he's unhinged," she said without even greeting me. "He told me that Elena deserves what's hers." What does that even mean? I didn't know. But I knew one thing. Whatever was happening, it wasn't just Elena anymore. Something else was moving behind her. Something uglier. That night, while I was trying to clear my head, I went into the closet to grab a hoodie and noticed one of Elena's boxes was half open. A stack of papers was sticking out. Stuff I'd never seen her touch. I don't know what made me pull the box down. Instinct, maybe, or self-preservation. Inside were a stack of printed budgeting spreadsheets, old tax documents and notes scribbled in Elena's handwriting, and an envelope addressed to an attorney dated 2 months before the ultimatum. My hands went cold. I opened the envelope. Inside was a draft intake form for a family law attorney in Madison. Filed under consultation notes. Under reason for inquiry, she had checked 3 boxes. Asset division, a marital property dispute, inheritance access through marriage laws, and then, in handwriting I recognized instantly, if he won't voluntarily merge finances, what are my legal options for claiming inherited funds as marital assets? My brain went wide and empty at the same time. She'd consulted a lawyer 2 months before she issued the ultimatum. Before she claimed I changed. Before she said she felt excluded. Before the fights. Before all of it. This wasn't a reaction. It was a plan. A long-term, calculated plan. I kept reading. There was another note. One that hit even harder. Mom says I need to protect myself if he refuses. She says men get weird when they have money. Mom, of course. But the second punch landed right beneath it. Barry says inheritance should belong to the family unit. Says I shouldn't be afraid to take what's mine. There it was. Not just Elena. Not just her mother. Barry had been coaching her. A man who had known me for a combined total of maybe 4 hours across 6 years. A A man with 3 bankruptcies and a habit of starting businesses that crashed within months. A man who saw my inheritance as an opportunity. I felt sick. I sat on the closet floor with those papers scattered around me like broken glass. I kept reading, even though I already knew I shouldn't. There was one more page. Printed email. From Elena, sent to her mother. The part that made my entire body go cold? If he doesn't cave by April, Barry says the other option is pushing for divorce early, so I can secure half before he moves it. He says men don't think ahead. I think he's right. April. Her ultimatum happened in April. She wasn't reacting to me. She was executing a timeline. And I hadn't even seen the worst part yet. Because taped to the final page was something that made my breath catch. A business card. For a real estate agent. With a note. After settlement, we can look for something better. No reason to stay in his place if the money splits right. His place. Not our place. The plan was never about partnership. It was about extraction. About getting what she thought she deserved. And then leaving. The ultimatum wasn't her breaking point. It was her deadline. After I found that stack of papers, the intake forms, the notes, the email chain with her mother, the business card taped to the bottom like some kind of trophy, it felt like my ribcage was closing in on itself. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think straight. Couldn't believe how stupid I'd been. She hadn't just planned a betrayal. She'd scheduled it. I spent the rest of that night sitting on the living room floor with every light off, going over every single detail again and again. Timeline. Motives. Lies. Manipulation. And the part that haunted me the most wasn't her planning for divorce. It was the smug certainty in her handwriting. He won't move it. He isn't like that. She thought I was predictable. Weak. Easy to manipulate. She thought I'd fold because she and her mother and Barry had already decided that money belonged to them. That was the switch for me. Not anger. Not heartbreak. Not even humiliation. It was clarity. For the first time since this whole thing started, I actually felt calm. Because if Elena and her personal advisory board wanted a war over my father's legacy, then fine. But I wasn't going to be the one blindsided. I grabbed the envelope, shoved it all into a folder, and the next morning I did the first intelligent thing I'd done in weeks. I called a lawyer. My sister had given me a name. A woman named Grant, an estate specialist in downtown Madison. Silver hair, sharp jawline, eyes that looked like she could see lies before you even thought about telling them. Her office felt like a courtroom. Quiet, dark wood, crisp air. She listened to the whole story without interrupting once. Not even when I told her about the ultimatum. Not even when I told her Elena had walked out. Not even when I showed her the notes and the consultation form. When I finished, she leaned back, crossed her legs and said, "Daniel, your wife didn't just threaten you. She attempted to position herself to extract assets she has no legal claim to. She telegraphed the play before she even made it." My throat felt tight. "So what can I do? You protect what's yours. And you do it now." She slid a folder toward me across her polished desk. Irrevocable trust. You control the terms. You control the beneficiaries. But, and this part is important, we explicitly exclude spouses. Past, present, future. I froze. That's harsh. She raised an eyebrow. Harsh? Son, she tried to orchestrate an exit plan with your inheritance as the payout. She's been coached by people who stand to benefit. She issued an ultimatum because she thought she had you boxed in. You have every right to make sure she never gets near this money. I swallowed. Hard. She continued, more quietly now. Your father left you a legacy. Her behavior shows she sees it as a lottery ticket. You can't negotiate with that. I signed the preliminary paperwork that afternoon. Walking out of that office, I felt like someone had peeled the panic off my skin. Not because this was over, it wasn't, but because I finally had control again. I moved the entire inheritance, all $811,000, into an irrevocable trust within the week. My sister and I became co-trustees. The exclusion language took up nearly a full page. It was ironclad, bulletproof. Elena had assumed I'd stand still. She'd assumed she could walk out, come back, demand access, and I'd hand it over to keep the peace. She didn't expect me to move first. She didn't expect me to protect myself. And she definitely didn't expect what happened next. Because when she found out, when her lawyer found out, when Barry found out, the reaction was so explosive it exposed the second twist I never saw coming. A twist that made everything before it look almost innocent. The trust finalized on a Thursday. By Friday afternoon, I felt like I could breathe for the first time in months. I thought the worst was behind me. God, I was wrong. The second twist didn't hit like the first one. Slow, creeping, pieced together from little clues. This one slammed into me like a truck. It started with an email. Not from Elena. Not from her mother. Not from Barry. From my bank. Subject line: Unusual activity alert. Attempted access. My stomach dropped. I opened it. Someone had tried to log into the investment account where the inheritance used to be, the one that now held a big fat $0 balance and a forwarding notice to the Irrevocable trust. 3 failed password attempts. 2 security question attempts. And then a lockout. The timestamp was 1:42 p.m. I checked my phone. At 1:40 p.m., Elena had texted me for the first time in a week. We need to talk about the account. Call me when you're ready to be rational. 2 minutes. She tried to access it 2 minutes after texting me. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone in hand, heart hammering. But the twist wasn't the attempted login. The twist came when I scrolled down to the bottom of the alert and saw the device information. MacBook. Registered owner, B. Harris. Location, Verona, Wisconsin. Barry. I felt my whole body go cold. He didn't just encourage her. He didn't just coach her. He tried to hack into my financial account. The access attempt didn't come from Elena's devices. Came from his. I forwarded everything to my lawyer, who called me within 10 minutes. Daniel, this changes everything. How bad is it? I asked. Bad for them, she said. Very bad. She explained it clearly. Attempting to access someone else's financial account, even if you're the spouse, is illegal. Doing it from a third party's device? Even worse. You do realize what this means, right? She asked. No, I said. Tell me. It means the ultimatum wasn't Elena's idea. I swallowed. It was Barry's? It was Barry's, she confirmed. And your mother-in-law's. And Elena let them run point. My lawyer told me something else I wasn't prepared for. They weren't trying to see the money. They were trying to move it. Your old account still had a link option for internal transfers. If the trust hadn't already been finalized, they might have been able to redirect funds if they'd guessed security questions. I felt sick. I sat there for a long time replaying all the moments I shrugged off. Every time Elena came home from girls' night, every time she said, "My mom says," every time Barry inserted himself like he had authority. It all made sense now. She wasn't being influenced. She was being handled, not just by her mother, but by Barry, a man with 3 bankruptcies, 2 failed LLCs, and a reputation for finding opportunities. I wasn't the husband in this scenario. I was the mark. And the inheritance? The payout. My lawyer's voice snapped me back. Daniel, listen carefully, she said. Do not respond to Elena. Not a single word. If they're desperate enough to try this, they're desperate enough to escalate. Escalate how? By claiming you stole something. By demanding money. By threatening litigation. By playing the victim. But now we have evidence. And they don't know we have it. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around me, feeling betrayal in places I didn't even know could hurt. The next morning, the explosion arrived. From Elena. From her mother. From Barry. Not in the way I expected. Not with lawyers. Not with threats. But with something far worse. Something that revealed the darkest, most chilling truth behind this entire mess. Elena and her mother didn't just want my inheritance. They needed it for a reason I never saw coming. And once I learned it, everything, the ultimatum, the manipulation, the pressure, suddenly made horrifying sense. The next morning, I woke up to a group text I didn't recognize at first. 3 numbers. No names. One of them was Elena's. One was definitely her mother's. The third had the last 4 digits I'd memorized from the bank alert. Barry. The message was short. We need to talk. You don't understand what you've done. No threats. No insults. Just that. My stomach twisted. Because when people who've been scheming suddenly drop the attitude and start speaking in soft warnings, it's never about morality. It's about desperation. I ignored it. Went to make coffee. 5 minutes later, another message hit. This time from Elena alone. Daniel, please. We didn't have a choice. I need to explain. Didn't have a choice. My blood ran cold at those words. Because guilty people beg. Manipulative people argue. Desperate people. They confess. I didn't answer. But they didn't stop. At 9:13 a.m., her mother called. I let it ring. At 9:14 she called again. Then Barry called. Then Elena. Then all three rapid fire like some deranged relay race. I put the phone on silent and went upstairs to shower. The second I stepped out, a voicemail notification popped up. It was from Elena. Her voice was shaking. Daniel, please listen. You don't understand what's going on. We needed the money. Not for us. For him. He got into something he can't get out of. Him. That one word dropped into my chest like a stone. I replayed the voicemail twice. Him wasn't me. Him wasn't Elena's brother. She didn't have one. And the tone in her voice wasn't fear of losing a marriage. It was fear of something else. Something bigger. Something she didn't control. I called my lawyer. Told her everything. She went completely still. Daniel, she said carefully. This wasn't about marital entitlement. They were trying to use you as a lifeline. For what? For someone else's mess. I didn't want to believe it. But I already knew who him was. Deep down, I had known since the first time Barry inserted himself into something that wasn't his. Barry had known the exact day the inheritance cleared. He knew the amount. He was the one who said inheritance belongs to the family unit. He was the one coaching Elena on legal options. He was the one whose laptop they used to try to get into my accounts. And now I knew why. I got the full truth 2 days later. Not from them, but through someone who had no reason to lie. A mutual acquaintance of theirs who worked at a bar in Verona. I'd stopped in after work just to clear my head. She recognized me instantly, came over, lowered her voice and said, "You should know. Barry owes a lot of people a lot of money. Dangerous people. People who don't wait politely for repayment." I stared at her. She kept going. "He's been bragging for months that your wife was married to an engineer with a gold mine coming his way. He said once the inheritance hit, he'd finally have a way out. A way out. Of debt. Of consequences. Of whatever or whoever was coming for him. Elena wasn't trying to build a future with me. She was trying to save Barry. Her mother wasn't protecting her daughter. She was protecting the man she'd hitched her life to. The inheritance wasn't their opportunity. It was their escape plan. And when I didn't hand it over, when I moved it into the trust, I destroyed their only exit. My marriage wasn't the casualty. It was the collateral. That was the truth. Cold. Ugly. Chilling. The ultimatum wasn't about equality. It wasn't about trust. It wasn't about partnership. It was about survival. Their survival. At the cost of mine. And once I understood that, revenge didn't feel vindictive. It felt necessary. After I learned the truth, that Elena, her mother, and Barry had been circling my father's inheritance like vultures because Barry owed money to the kind of people who don't send polite reminders. Something inside me finally locked into place. Not anger. Not heartbreak. Just purpose. If they had dragged me into a mess they created, if they had tried to make my father's legacy their lifeline, then they were going to choke on the consequences. And I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. The first strike came silently. My lawyer drafted a cease and desist packet with everything. The bank's fraud alert, Barry's device information, or the notes I found in Elena's closet, screenshots of the group messages, and a warning that any continued contact could trigger criminal investigation. We sent one to each of them. My lawyer's exact phrasing was, "Further attempts to access clients' assets will be treated as felony fraud." It landed like a grenade. Within 2 hours, Elena sent a frantic string of texts. Please don't do this. We didn't mean for it to go that far. You don't understand what Barry got mixed up in. Please just talk to me before something bad happens. Something bad. The irony. I didn't reply. The second strike was more surgical. I filed a report with the Credit Bureau Fraud Departments, listing Barry's attempted access using his device ID. That flag goes on his record, not mine. Permanent red mark. Goodbye loans. Goodbye credit cards. Goodbye business ventures. He had tried to steal from me. He could live with the stain. The third strike? That one was personal. I called a realtor and put the house she once called our forever place under renovation. Fresh paint, new floors, brighter lighting. Removed anything she'd ever picked out. Erased every trace of her influence. When I finished and stood in the living room, it finally felt like my space. Not a stage she'd performed a marriage on. 2 weeks passed without a word. Then one night I got a call. Blocked number. I almost ignored it. Almost. When I answered, the voice was thin, strained, unraveling. Elena. Daniel, please. Barry's in trouble. My mom's losing it. We just need a little help. There it was. The truth stripped clean. Help equals money. I said nothing. Her breath hitched. Please. They're saying he owes more than we can, just a loan. Just until... No, I said. It was the calmest word I'd ever spoken. A single syllable that sliced the cord she'd been pulling for months. She started crying loud, desperate sobs that were probably real, but I couldn't care anymore. I loved you, she said between gasps. I didn't know what else to do. That's the problem, I said quietly. You did know. You just chose wrong. I hung up, and for the first time since this nightmare started, I felt free. The final strike wasn't planned. Life handed it to me. A month later, I heard through a mutual acquaintance that Barry had skipped town. Disappeared overnight. The people he owed weren't polite, and they weren't patient. Elena and her mother? Left behind with the fallout. Scrambling. Panicked. Drowning in a mess they'd once hoped I would bankroll. I never wished harm on them, but I wasn't going to save them. That was their story to live in now, not mine. As for me, I rebuilt. Slowly, carefully, like someone patching cracks in a foundation that had been sinking for years. The house became mine again. The trust kept growing. I started dating someone who didn't flinch at boundaries, didn't care about money, didn't talk about our future like it was an investment strategy. And for the first time, I didn't feel haunted by what happened. I felt grateful, because Elena showed me exactly who she was before she could take anything that mattered. She thought she'd break me with an ultimatum. Instead, she exposed herself. And Dad's money? Still untouched. Still safe. Still exactly where he meant it to be. In the end, the entire ordeal boiled down to one simple truth. Some people see a marriage. Some people see a meal ticket. She made her choice, and I made mine. Turns out, the best revenge wasn't the trust or the legal wins or the exposure. It was realizing I never needed to save her. I only needed to save myself.